Hey all, here we are again. So, seems like it's been a long time since I've made a video, but I know it's only been a couple of days. Couple of things. There is still a discussion board question about flirting, which I'd like you to respond to, so that I can start responding to those answers. Again, we're looking. It's just a conceptual idea. This whole definition business. So please get to it. Nobody's being graded on that. It's all just a matter of, I'll try to point out what works and what doesn't in your definitions, and hopefully, please feel free to comment on each other's work. That's why it's there. It's open to all of everybody to look at. So hopefully get some responses from each other. I want to talk about the two essays. One of them is in the book called I Want a Wife, and the other one is called Being a Man, which I supplied a link on the internet for you. It's they're both good essays. I Want a Wife was written back in, oh God, I forget, 60 or 70, whatever it was. It was a while ago. So that one's dated, okay, which is important to know because I don't know that you could write that essay today. I'll get to that in a minute. The other one, Thoreau, is 1985, also a little older, but not as old as the other one, I don't think. I don't have it with me here. Anyway, you can look at the in the textbook. You can see when I Want a Wife was written. Do I have it written down here? I didn't write it down. Damn. Anyway, oh wait, here. I Want a Wife was written in. Of course, it's not going to tell me. Why would it tell me? Anyway, so flirting is on the discussion board. Today we're talking about gender in some capacity, right? But not just gender. These are large terms. Anything having to do with male, female, the whole LGBTQ thing, things like husband, wife, boy, girl, masculine, feminine. Any of those terms are useful here. I tell a story, not a story much, but I make a point in my classes when I'm in front of them, when this topic comes up, to point out that years ago when I first started teaching, or even when I was a student, but when I first started teaching, if this topic came up and I would ask, what is the word husband, or father rather, father and mother? Just pick those two terms. Of course, that was back in the day when everything was binary. Don't forget, that's changed a lot. But so everything was. I would say, what does it mean to be a father? Hands went right up, and they would talk about all the obvious things. I'm sure you could come up with too. Strong, the leader of the house, the boss of the house, the breadwinner, the person who was going to go out and work, bring home the bacon, the whole thing. The one who would enforce discipline. And the one to be served when he came home. He was the one who worked him. Honey, I'm home. That's the whole thing. What does it mean to be a woman? Her hands would go up, and it was like, okay, I'm going to get married. I'm going to have children. I'm going to raise the children. I'm going to stay home. I'm going to cook. I'm going to clean. I'll be there with when my husband comes home with whatever he wants to do, and he would give me money to run the household. Now, if I ask that question in class, what does it mean to be a father or a mother? Nobody raises their hand. Virtually nobody raises their hand because, except for the biological issue of procreation, all of those lines have become blurred. There are plenty of single-parent households. There are plenty of women who work and take care of bringing home the bacon and taking care of all that stuff, who are a lot tougher than their husbands, and husbands who stay home and take care of the children as well. You guys out there, you might want to ask yourself, if your wife made plenty of money, would you stay home and take care of the kids, let her go out to work and you stay home? If you say yes, then you've certainly come a long way. If you say no, you might want to ask yourself why. One reason, of course, a lot of people say now is just the idea of working feels good. But I wasn't talking about that. I'm talking about the idea of taking that away. And why would that not be pleasing to you? So all of these things. Now, the other thing that comes up, which is important, is the cultural issues. Okay, what does it mean to be a man or a woman or masculine, feminine, all those things in the United States versus all the other places on the planet. Now, certainly a lot of my students come from other places. Certainly a lot of my students' parents come from other places. So this becomes an issue, and certainly this can be part of a discussion in a paper to define these things, maybe to, as I, with the other video about different kinds of definition, one of them is called stipulation, which means if I wanted to write about gender, you might stipulate that I want to write about it from this particular country or culture's background and not the United States. Okay, now we're not talking about the United States, we're talking about whatever, Pakistan, Iraq, Africa, China, whatever other country you want to specify. And that's fair enough. I think dealing with it in the States might be a more rich essay simply because, not more rich, it might be more challenging because things have changed so much, whereas some other cultures haven't. And so it would just be, this is the way it's always been and this is the way it still is. Therefore, the United States and some European countries, things have changed quite a bit, and that change becomes an interesting thing to discuss. So 2 essays that I have you look at now. One of them is called I Want a Wife. This one is quick and easy. It is, as I said, dated because I don't think you could write an essay like this because nobody would define a wife like this anymore. But back in let me see if I can find it while I have you here. I Want a Wife. It's driving me crazy because the date is important. I Want a Wife. 251. Bear with me. This is the boring part of the video. 1971. Okay. This is about almost 15 years earlier than the other one called On Being a Man. So, yeah, a long time ago. Nobody in that audience was born, except me. So things have changed. Now, what she's doing here is also, she's writing what they call a satire. And I think we talked about satire in class. She's deliberately pushing this to some extreme. It gets crazy by the end of the essay, where by the end of the essay, he's saying, if I have a wife, I want to be able to trade her in for a newer model, like you would a car. That's how it ends, which is ludicrous, but she makes the point. But the definition of women and mothers and wives has changed. So again, in this one, she's deliberately saying, look, if these are all the things that a woman does, she types up his papers, she cleans for him, she makes sure the house is perfect, and she raises the children, she takes care of them, going to the doctor. She is always looks good. She only speaks when spoken to. She is never challenges him. She lets him do whatever he wants. He's allowed to have an affair because his needs are important. She needs to be available for him sexually anytime he wants because it's important. And as I said before, he wants to be able to trade her in because you got to keep a younger model on hand at all times. This is ludicrous, but, and here's the way the essay works. If that's what it means to be a wife, then why wouldn't she want one too? I mean, it's something good to want. So that's where how the essay works, right? She's saying, yeah, this is great. I mean, who wouldn't want a wife? What's interesting as you read through it is that the beginning of the essay doesn't sound all that crazy. I mean, it's not perfect, but it gradually gets more humorous and then more ludicrous as the essay goes on until finally, as I said at the end. And that halfway through, you realize this is a satire. She's kidding us, although she's trying to make a point. Of course, this brings up bigger issues about what it means to be, again, a wife or a mother or male or female. What is your role? There was an article or a book, I think, somebody wrote about the necessity of men. What do we need men for? Except for the sex part of procreation, what do we actually bring to the table? Now, one negative way of putting it is that we bring nothing to the table, therefore let us all go become extinct. But the other part of it is that, does one have to bring something that the other one doesn't to the table? Do we have to have separate roles? Who invented these separate roles? Again, except for the biology of things, why? Who said men should go out to work and women stay home? This became socially imposed on all of us at some point. The male-dominated society for many, many, many years, centuries, and so this became, certainly we were in charge, I guess. But as the other essay, one called "On Being a Man," says, this was a terrible burden for men who didn't ask to be the breadwinners, the boss, the stronger ones, the ones who can't cry. So she tries to make a point. This is ridiculous. We shouldn't have these things, these roles to have. And Paul Theroux, I won't read the whole thing. It's not a long essay. It reads very quickly, and he's angry about being a man. I'm just going to read two short paragraphs, and he makes his point pretty clearly. He does make references to other writers and what it means to be a writer in this too, but in the beginning, he's pretty funny actually, and serious. So here's the second paragraph of the essay. I'll just read what he says. I have always disliked being a man. The whole idea of manhood in America is pitiful, in my opinion. This version of masculinity is a little like having to wear an ill-fitting coat for one's entire life. By contrast, I imagine femininity to be an oppressive sense of nakedness. Even the expression, be a man, strikes me as insulting and abusive. It means be stupid, be unfeeling, obedient, soldierly, and stop thinking. Man means manly. And how can one think about men without considering the terrible ambition of manliness? And yet, it is part of every man's life. It's a hideous and crippling lie. It not only insists on difference and connives at superiority, it also is by its very nature destructive, emotionally damaging, and socially harmful. Okay, he's pissed. But again, if you've lived in this country for any length of time, you know that there is a certain amount of truth to that, or at least it's based in some sort of stereotypical truth. He also, then 2 paragraphs later, says femininity, being ladylike, implies needing a man as witness and seducer. But masculinity celebrates the exclusive company of men. That's why it is so grotesque, and that is also why there is no manliness without inadequacy, because it denies men the natural friendship of women. So being a man means that we hang out with men, because that's what manly guys do, and women, by the nature of their femininity, need to be seduced by men who don't want any part of them. It's confusing. But really all that I would like to leave you with, just leave this last paragraph, it says there'd be no point in saying any of this, again I'm quoting, if it were not generally accepted that to be a man is somehow a privilege. Interesting idea. It is on the contrary an unmerciful and punishing burden. Being a man is bad enough, being manly is appalling. So here's the point. Okay, they just make it very simple. If you've never thought about what it means to be a man or a woman, or whatever it is that you identify as. Although I would think that those people who are identifying as something other than the binary choices have thought about this long and hard. Those people in the interestingly, I would think, and you can tell me what you think about this, is that those people who are involved in the LGBT community, those people who have identified with some other gender or sex, have thought about this a lot more than the average male and female, because we've just always the cisgender, as they call it, SIS, have always just sort of very, and I say this with respect, simply decided, well, I'm a male because of my physical body, or I'm female because of my physical body, and haven't really thought about it much beyond that. In 2020, we're asking to think about that. I mean, even me, who's a lot older than you, I am thinking about what it means to be a male, and I think to myself, I don't really know what masculinity means anymore. It does, and in some ways, it doesn't matter to me. And I don't mean that it's not an important concept, but when you come to the realization that the idea of masculine and feminine, at least in my head, doesn't really make much of a difference. Male-female makes a difference. I get that. I understand, what I'm physically called, but not much more than that. It doesn't matter. Those lines are blurred. I mean, look at this. Look at what I'm wearing. For the love of God, this wouldn't be the outfit of a man, if you will, in 1939 or 29 or 1809. But it doesn't matter anymore. I can wear orange, and whatever. But you, or each of you, have different points of view, and I know that some of you come from different places. So consider it, and especially those of you who come from other countries where this is a much stricter idea. How is it living in this country where it is becoming more flexible, more fluid, where the lines are getting blurry, and you can virtually be whatever you say you are? So how does one define this? Now, you can answer that question defining it personally. You can define it in terms of popular culture. What do you think how is it defined in this country or that country? There's other ways of thinking about it. And again, the terms, you can stipulate even more if you want. Male, female, boy, girl, husband, wife, or any of those other designations in the LGBT community. Something to think about. And if you've never thought about it, it can become, I think it's very interesting to at least engage in it. Nobody's asking anyone to, change or anything like that, or nobody's judging anybody. This is just an intellectual, but a very timely situation to be concerned with. It's not something we can ignore. So, there you go. Please get to the flirting aspect of this on the discussion board. I really need to get all of you involved. And there's going to be another one added to this probably by the end of the week about gender. Okay, so be thinking about that as well. I want to get the process of thinking about these topics. All of these topics will show up in our choices for the final essay, which I haven't decided how to do yet. So anyway, I'm also thinking of Zooming with everybody. So we'll think about that. That's going to be done. If we do that, it'll be done at a time when we would have met anyway, Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, or Tuesday or Thursday, or whatever days we met as a class. Since I'm talking to a number of different classes right now. Anyway, everybody, waiting for the wind and the hail to happen. Be well, and I'll talk to you soon. Peace.